After sales has finally got its time in the spotlight, where it always deserved to be.
AI is not the strategy. Closing the retention gap.
It's a 24/7 job, and it needs to be done at the highest level all the time, and people don't do that.
Technology doesn't have days off, doesn't feel ill, doesn't go on holiday.
The gap is there because you don't understand, you don't know your customers as well as you think you do. You've got to be really, really selfish with your customers. Don't ever let them walk away.
Don't fly to San Francisco, but go down to the dealership and truly understand the customer.
Everybody has a plan until they get a punch in the mouth.
If you can give people an Apple Store experience when they're looking to buy their car, you've got to believe it, you've got to breathe it, you've got to absolutely let it exude from the pores of your body.
We are ready to go. Welcome to the Autoflows podcast. We have looked very much forward to meeting these gentlemen. Maybe first let me introduce Paul Bennett.
Thank you, Nicholas. I'm Paul Bennett. I've been working with Autoflows now for 4 or 5 months. I was very much attracted to engage with them because for a number of years, for more than 40 years, I've been involved in the automotive industry in systems, selling cars, data systems, software applications. And my former business was in customer retention for automotive finance companies. And I just connected with the Autoflows process and concept of creating customer retention using after sales. And when I considered it, it was just such a close comparison to what I've spent 20 years creating and building that I wanted to get involved with them because it's the product it's sensational.
That's a good introduction. Welcome. I like to call you Nash, but let's say...
No, we've decided that Nash sounds good, but it is Steve Nash. Steve Nash, not to be confused with the basketball player. There is a very famous basketball player called Steve Nash, and I'm clearly not him. Yeah, so I mean, I'm new to Autoflows. In fact, my first connection was through Paul, who knew of me in the industry. I've been in the industry a similar time to Paul, but the majority of my experience is in the after-sales field. I was Group After-Sales Director of BMW in the UK for 15 years, and that included the time when we had Rover and Land Rover and, obviously Mini and BMW and Rolls-Royce. So, it's very close to my heart. And when I started to understand what Autoflows was about, thinking these are the things that drove me crazy when I was in that role. How could we do things better? How could we retain customers more effectively? And I started to see the answers, in what you were presenting. For me, it became a no-brainer to kind of come and find out more because, the problems have not changed. I mean, it's, the last 12 years I've been running an organization called the Institute of the Motor Industry, which is connected, but it's professional body. But, I look at the problems around the industry. I'm still very, very involved and things haven't moved on. What Autoflows does can move the industry on. So, I think we're both at a stage in our careers, our lives even, where you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. But when something excites you and, really piques your interest, then it's great to get involved.
Yeah, of course, what we know is today we want to maybe as well discuss the broader agenda. And where you maybe can come in is 50 years ago, we were always talking about selling new cars and not after sales. So maybe should we just start with the first question? If you look from the board and the top management, prioritizing between sales and after sales, figure out how to actually work with the strategic agenda. What comes to your mind, or what has changed, or how do you think boards and management should think about that?
Well, in some ways, I'm slightly jealous of the fact that today, after sales gets much more of the airtime than it did in my day, because 14 years ago, when I was still at BMW, the dealers were still making good profit out of new cars. The dynamic of the business was very different. Today, certainly from a UK perspective, when dealers are, even really good dealers are struggling to make much more than a 1 or 2% return on the bottom line. And they've suddenly realized how important after sales is. Of course, it always was. It's just something they took for granted. But now this is a very, very important part of the business, and I need to know any and every way I can to make it better. To wring out the greatest efficiency and effectiveness I can from that side of the business. So it's a very good time to be engaged with dealers and business owners over their after sales business. And after sales has finally got its time in the spotlight, where it always deserved to be.
With the narrative that we talked about, based on the research that we've done, is like the profitability crisis.
Yeah.
So, and what to do about it.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, as I say, and I think this is not just a UK problem, it's a European-wide problem.
Yeah.
Wringing profit out of new car sales has become very, very difficult. Used cars used cars and after sales is where it's at. And there's a sort of connection there anyway, because, more used cars is more after sales business. So, look, as I say, if I'd had this, the Autoflows solutions, back when I was doing my former role, I would have snapped it up just like that. I really would, because, it answers that age-old problem of getting human beings to, who I love to death. I ran a professional body, so I'm not anti-people by any stretch of imagination, but I understand what the natural limitations are. People are not consistent, and when it comes to being on the processes and making sure that you're following up and driving retention, it's a 24/7 job, and it needs to be done at the highest level all the time, and people don't do that. People don't do that. They have good days and bad days. They have sick days and holidays and all sorts of other reasons why the job doesn't get done. And there's a huge opportunity gap there, driven by that, which you found the key to opening that door.
Yeah, and just like on a high level, what do you think, Paul? Like you say, that when you normally say, for one to change, there should be a sense of urgency. When you discuss with your clients and come around Europe, is there a new sense of urgency in terms of profitability crisis?
Undoubtedly, absolutely, without question. And the after-sales world has been well known for many, many years that car dealerships, the sales through of new and used vehicles covers all the fixed costs and overheads of running the business. And the after-sales department was the main profit driver. Of course, with new car revenues and profitability being squeezed, still having used cars, obviously, which are making strong money, generally speaking, wrapped up with finance and other value-added products and services, the whole environment of after-sales becomes so much more critical. And the spotlight has focused on it now. And using technology to do the heavy lifting and to do all of the engine room, and then blending that with the human interface, you get the best of both worlds. And as Steve has just said very clearly, technology doesn't have days off, doesn't feel ill, doesn't go on holiday. So it's the ultimate companion. But I think when it's blended with the human interface, you really get that real bonuses start to really come through. And the engine room is so important. So people talk about AI everywhere you go, and rightly so. It's quickly becoming embedded in all parts of life, in every possible sphere. But the real benefit of the Autoflows platform that I've experienced firsthand over a number of months is that the real quality sits beneath the waterline in the data analytics, in the integrations with multiple vendors, and the AI aspect. Of course, it's utilized wherever required to maximize efficiencies, but the AI aspect is very often referred to in the general marketplace as the panacea, and it's not the panacea. The engine room is the panacea. The overlay is the AI that interacts to make things happen perhaps more quickly, perhaps more fluently, but also you can't confuse process automation and AI as being one and the same thing. And also, I like to say that we sell the steak, not the sizzle, because everybody's selling sizzle, and AI is this and AI is that. Yes, it's important when taken in context. And if you've got a poor engine room with low quality data, the AI aspect will not give you the results that you're looking for. The output comes from high quality data, well considered, and the AI is the extra little cherry on the cake.
And just with your experience, Steve, I guess that you've always seen this. This year retention is on the agenda, next year it's not on the agenda. This year on the agenda, not on the agenda. So what's new?
Well, I think for so many years, I think in general terms, at the highest level in business, people thought if sales is what it's all about. If you sell enough cars, the after sales business just kind of follows. Well, that hasn't been true for 30 plus years, because every car that was ever launched and is ever launched has longer service intervals and less service content than the one before. So you have to keep pedaling harder to keep growing the business. The business doesn't grow on its own. And, so retention is vital. I mean, there was a time when franchise dealers didn't worry about cars over 2 or 3 years old. They had enough after sales business just from the new cars they sold under warranty or whatever. But that stopped being true a long time ago. They've had to push into the 4, 5, 6 and older, year-old cars. And across the board, you've got to be doing that better and better and better. You can't afford to let customers lapse. You can't afford to have data that's not serving you, that isn't telling, isn't allowing you to continue to engage effectively with customers. So, I mean, and that's, as I say, that's what, for the longest time, I looked for solutions, when I was in that role, which were, they were the best solutions available at the time, but they were partial solutions in the end. And I know that, I know a lot of people might watch a lot of, dealers might watch this and say, well, I don't have a data problem. I guarantee they do. I mean, there's a scale. Some have a really big data problem, others, but nobody's data is where they really need it. And yeah, it's like you say. I mean, the once you've got that bit, the process and the data and everything correct, then you can add the sizzle on top. That's where the AI, this intelligence comes in to really drive a result. But yeah, I as I say, the job doesn't get any easier. So you need to find, and look, people have bought partial solutions all over the place. Like lots of people have got stacks of technology mounted on top of their DMS that are doing bits and pieces. But what I like about this is it's a holistic solution. It's an end-to-end solution. And they can do away with a lot of that. So it's not adding something else to their tech stack. It's put this on. You can take a load of that stuff away. So there are multiple benefits.
Yeah. And now we are doing a podcast here, and we want to educate and not sell. But
yeah,
it's like, I like that we bring in the enthusiasm about Autoflows. But I think on a bigger scale, I think what is interesting is like, what do you, when you're thinking, what is then the most difficult part of that transformation that most dealerships have to do? Like, before, probably today, after sales is mainly reactive and not proactive. Most dealerships, I like your story, are saying you go into the dealership and then they say, "Well, it was busy today." Great. The next day is not busy today. We don't know why.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, can you try with your CEO experience, your outlook, like, you know?
Well, that was my greatest frustration. Being responsible for a whole dealer network was when you will walk in and go, what's the business looking like? Oh, we're pretty quiet at the moment. So why is that? I don't really know, or we're really, really busy. Why is that? I don't really know. And it's like, but you should know, this is a vital part of your business. You can't just go with the flow. You've got to be in, particularly now, because, with profit not coming from other key sources, you've got to know where your business is coming from. And be in control of it. I can't think of any other business where you wouldn't be. If you were a local barber cutting hair, you'd have an idea of where your customers are and who they are, and how to keep in touch with them. You wouldn't just sit there in an empty shop going, hope it gets better soon, would you? You couldn't afford to. So, and neither can dealers. They can't. It's really critical that they are in the driving seat, and they know where they know what business is out there, they know where it's coming from, when it's due, and they're actually proactive about making it happen.
What's your thoughts about taking control, being in the driver's seat with what's new? We can talk about that, but how do you stimulate that change?
I think the issue primarily is a change management one, because people's attitudes and feelings are always the most difficult to adapt and to change and to follow on. But I think if you can give real world examples, you can give people information, you can educate them as to what they, rather than just saying, look, here's a number, it needs to be this, and you're missing it by 20%, fix it. Well, it's no use to man nor beast. You have to be able to say to people, here's your number, this is where you need to be, these are the areas you need to focus on. And why are these the areas you need to focus on? Because our data analytics demonstrates clearly to us that these two areas out of 4 or 5 are the weakest in your processes, and you need to focus on that. And drilling down even further, well, okay, that's great, but what do I focus on? And so, for example, you could say invoice presentation to a consumer is, I don't really want to go towards invoice presentation because it's a bit sticky, because it's going to be a high price, and I'm probably going to create more problems for myself than it's worth. But actually quite the reverse. Invoice presentation is your friend. It's not your foe. Because if people are educated, they're far easier to deal with. And if you explain very clearly how this pricing matrix has been built, well, the vast majority of people are reasonable, and the vast majority of people will accept it. It may not be ideal. They don't particularly want to pay 800 or 900 euros or pounds or whatever it happens to be. It's a sort of distressed purchase, and you don't really see anything for it. You walk out and get in your car and drive off, and it's kind of the same as when it came in. You convince yourself it's driving better because you've just spent 900 or whatever on it. But so don't shy away from the hard components, and educate customers wherever possible, because they're far easier to deal with.
Let's say that the main takeaway was we start with being data driven.
Yes.
But I have one more question for you, Steve. In leadership, you would normally say, what gets celebrated gets done. How do you think most dealerships think about celebrations today versus 30 years ago? Are we celebrating the same thing?
Probably not. Probably not. No.
You sold a new car? Let's celebrate it.
Yeah. Ring the bell and all that kind of stuff. It's no. Look, I mean, I think the thing is, so much of what goes on in business now is more ambition than more driven by ambition than the reality. So it's like that's the figure we did last year, but let's work back from what we need as a business, and that becomes your target. Well, that's never really achievable. You know, you need to look at what. You need to do it from the ground up. You need to actually understand in real detail what your business opportunity is. And that's where your target should be based. And then, you know, if you put the right tools in place and to drive that business back in, then you can set realistic targets and then you can celebrate. You know, then you can say, you know, I haven't set some finger in the air target. I know exactly why that number is what it is, and I know it's achievable. And when we ring that bell, then we can celebrate. You know, I mean, look, I've believed for many, many years. I mean, we had a discussion earlier on. We were talking about customer satisfaction, and I said, you know, I've seen it measured every single way you could possibly imagine, you know, both internally, externally, people being measured by Trustpilot, you name it, star ratings, anything you want to give it. But fundamentally, if your staff are happy, they'll deliver a good experience. And you make your staff happy by giving them good information and simple instructions. It's kind of builds on what you were saying, you know, by being able to say, this is what you're getting wrong. And actually, if you just do that, you know, that will turn it around, rather than showing them a massive matrix of different things and expecting them to work it out for themselves, you know. Yeah. So I think, you know, it's about being ambitious, but ambitious based on the right data, and, you know, setting achievable goals and then celebrating them when you achieve them.
So what do you like? Just imagine the picture. Are we celebrating that we got 10 5-stars in a row? Always celebrating, ringing the bell, and everyone's getting a cake when we sold 3 cars or 10 cars, or we reach out. We should probably do both, but
yeah, you should probably do.
But you know, when do you get promoted?
Well, you know, at the end of the day, it's a business, isn't it? You know, so your primary goal has to be, but it's an ongoing business. So it's about achieving the right targets the right way. So you've got to. You know, you've got to make the money. I mean, nobody should be embarrassed about that or hide from that. So you're driving the business and you're achieving your business goals. But if you can do that in the right way so that you're achieving customer satisfaction, you know, you're creating retention, then everyone's happy. Everyone's happy. You can celebrate because you know that you're creating the wealth that can make you reward your staff, and it's a sustainable loop.
Yeah, because that would link me to another question. I was actually thinking at having at the end, but let's have it now. Like, let's say there's a next generation of young people in the automotive business. Can they have a career if they start in the after-sales department?
I think they certainly can have a career if they start in the after-sales department. Hopefully you wouldn't expect me to say anything else. but the matter of fact is, you know, automotive retail sometimes doesn't start with the end in mind. And to start with the end in mind, you have to hire the right people for the right roles, give them a career path to develop, respect your staff, have a happy ship. And as you were saying earlier, when you walk into, I've done over the years countless dealer audits, and within 30 seconds of walking into an establishment, you know if that place is happy. You can just get a feeling as to whether that's a happy ship or not such a happy ship. And when people consider it as the whole process as a we, as opposed to an I, you know, we is really the name of the game, because we all rely on each other. And the salesman relies equally on the after sales and the service department, because there's many, many times when you need to cut across those two lines in the sand. Very often, certainly until recent years, you know, sales and service were, you know, a glass wall would be between the two, and there'd be the animosity between the sales people and the service people. Thankfully, that has broken down considerably. But no, there is a great career to be had with the right firms who provide a career path, not just a come and down and do this for however long before you move on.
I'd obviously say you can have a great career in after sales because I've had one, and I've given lots of other people, great careers through after sales. I mean, only recently was out in China speaking to the CEO of BMW China, the whole operation, manufacturing and everything, and I started him off as an apprentice and I've got lots of examples like that. But look, it's. Yeah, I mean,
you know what I'm hinting at.
No, of course I do.
I don't know what the distribution is. Normally we talk about do we have female or male, but like let's say that 80% of the general managers or the CEO come with a sales background.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you have a context. You have your own kind of a way of succeed.
Well, do you know what was interesting again, I'm sorry to keep mentioning BMW, but it was a big part of my career. But we had an undergraduate program. We used to bring in interns, about 30 of them every year, and every one of them wanted to work in marketing, and if not marketing, sales. And then a lot of them would go, well, we can't put you all there, so some of you are going to have to work in after sales. And then they come in and they find out, this is a massive business, and it does have sales and it does have marketing. It has all of those things. I mean, it's ludicrous to think that, the huge amount of, but it has so many other aspects as well. But look, I mean, I believe particularly in the retail side of things, some of the jobs in retail, I mean, particularly the service advisor role is a tough job. It's a tough job. You're the point of the spear almost, and everything you can do to make their life better and easier. So expecting them sometimes, loading a lot of the admin tasks on them, is where some of the weaknesses lie. Cause, that's where some of the data goes awry because, there are too many people involved and the processes are inconsistent. But the more you can actually tidy all of that up and give them stuff they can work with, their job becomes better and easier and more enjoyable. And it's easier to attract people into those roles than it has been. And so that's another benefit that I can see.
All of the aspects that you mentioned, Steve, with regard to after sales and that process you've just illustrated, is equally true in the sales department as well, of course.
Yeah.
And that needs to change and adapt, and it has done quite considerably so over the years. But specialization is certainly, in my opinion, the name of the game. And whilst people think, well, why should I have to pay for more headcount to do work in this particular area? Because the headcount that you've got as a salesperson, or potentially in the after-sales arena, the character and the characteristics of that individual may not fit the job that you're asking them to do. So, business development centers, be it in after-sales or in sales, are real engine rooms of profitability. And if they're run, leanly, and also leveraging technology services, you can really, really extract all of the gold or the silver that's in the seam. But without that, you get scant respect paid to the data mining and the use of customer data that you have within the business. And business development centers staffed by the right individuals who enjoy a secondary role behind the scenes, creating that desire from the customer to do something is crucial.
Yeah. So now back to, you could say, what we would like to be talking today about is strategies for boards and the management, what to think about, and let's say set after sales first. Let's follow the money. We often say after sales is the business. It maybe accounts for 50, 60, 70% sometimes of the profit. So it's a huge profit maker. Then Paul had an amazing recommendation: be data driven. So now comes the hard question. Now you're in the boardroom. What's the first KPI you put on the whiteboard?
Profit. Yeah.
Very good. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can say, well, maybe you can. If I think that's a good one. But how do we then measure that? I think that's absorption rate. is a good measure.
Yeah.
To make
it's
sure
funny.
that you're connected to profit.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, absorption is one of those things that's gone in and out of fashion. I remember, I mean, it used to be a staple. People sort of said, I mean, and it was possible at one time to aim for kind of 90 or 100% absorption. It hasn't been possible to do that for a long time. But I think understanding though, I mean, for me, I don't think you can get an effective business unless people are informed. So people need to know, what it is they're trying to achieve. Expecting people to run to a finish line that's invisible is, is a waste of time. So, without blinding them with data, they've got to know big picture, what sort of revenue you need to generate as a business, and sort of have some idea of how that contributes to your, what your overheads look like. So, as a business, we need to make this much money in order to have something positive down there in the bottom right hand corner, and that's easy to present without overcomplicating it. But then they just need to know in the simplest terms, what do I have to do to help make that happen? And the easier you can make that, it's like you say, I mean, the best businesses, and you can feel it when you walk in, absolutely within 2 minutes. And it's got absolutely nothing to do with the premises. I've seen some of the nicest premises you could imagine with a Starbucks coffee in the corner and everything else, soulless, not because of Starbucks, but and I've been into other businesses which weren't so, but that it's all about that connectivity. It's the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, because everybody knows what they're there for, what they're trying to achieve, and has a good idea of how they can achieve it.
Can we just double down on it? Because, would you say that then, like, we have been going from having a more revenue growth mindset to change to a profit mindset? Because that is something different to run a dealership than having a profit mindset versus a growth mindset. Let's just open the new location and have new brands in and sell more cars.
Well, there's an old saying, isn't there? Turnovers for vanity, profits for sanity.
Yeah, exactly. and with the manufacturers facing the turmoil, for want of a better word, in Europe with regard to market share of the traditional legacy manufacturers, and indeed the very aggressive marketing and very good vehicles that are now coming in hand over fist from China from different brands, it's creating a great deal of concern, because they need to rationalize their model lineup, and that's being spoken about in the press, automotive press, over the past weeks. For an example, Oliver Bloom from Volkswagen Group is considering how they can reduce their model range by 50%. Now that's a huge cutback in products. So that's again more of a vanity focus, and you have to make sure you're in business to make a profit, to look after your customers, and look at whether they be internal or external, and you've really got to have a handle on managing and measuring every area of that business, and after sales is absolutely top of that list.
Yeah, no, but I think it sounds easy.
It's not.
It's not. It's not. So like, let's say, like, it's just because why haven't we changed then? That's kind of what I keep coming back to. We I think if you took the temperature with your and said how to measure the temperature with your story, what happened to my workshop? What happened in my dealership today? Oh, it was full. No, not full. Are we, like, strategically, you say we should be in control and we should have a profit mindset and we should have some data points to ensure that we are proactive.
I'll tell you what, famous quote, Mike Tyson the boxer said, everybody has a plan until they get a punch in the mouth, and the problem with business, and after sales particularly, which is a frenetic side of the business, or can be, is that, you know, a lot of people have the right plans, but they don't survive first contact, if you know what I mean. And that's when things become, that's where you really need somebody, you know, quite often you need to seek help to find better ways of having robust processes that work, you know, however busy you are, the essentials still get done. Because, you know, the truth is we have a lot of, we have a lot of processes in business generally, but in after sales we have, quite a lot of science, you know, things like workshop loading and stuff, yeah, exact science. And then you apply it to something that's very inexact. You know, the cars come in that actually require something different to what you booked them for. You know, technicians don't turn up for work because they go sick, you know, a service advisor doesn't turn up, you know, so the reality of what happens on the day compared to all of the nice stuff you've worked out is very, very different. And you can't easily change that, but there are things that and then you wonder why, you know, the data recording and stuff like that isn't happening accurately. Well, you know, that's why. So, and it's why when you go in and you talk to management and say, what are your processes? They'll tell you what their processes are. And you think, well, they sound okay. Then you go and talk to the people on the front line and they say, yeah, well, we don't actually do that, you know, or we do that when we can, you know. And so, you know, you have to find a way of, as I say, you know, ensuring against that, you know, taking some of that stuff away from the people who are just, you know, handling all of the kind of crazy stuff that goes on at the front end.
With all the variables that Steve just mentioned, you know, you are, when you're on the front line, you're in a position of managing as best you can a controlled chaos because it is controlled, because to some degree, but you, as you say, you don't have control over all of those moving parts, and very often, you know, you've got all customers booked in to arrive at different times and they don't, or they all arrive at once, or some of them don't, and so it throws a lot of things out of the window very quickly.
Not only that, but sometimes I've been into dealerships where they're super busy because they've got an incredible number of cars booked in for the day. And actually, if they only had better information, they could have booked less cars and done more work. One of the best dealers I ever worked with was, and this wasn't a BMW dealer actually, was a rather large dealership that only ever had half a day's lead time. Had big workshop, big body shop, and they were never booked for up until more than lunchtime. And yet every single day they worked into overtime because they had great processes and they knew how to upsell effectively. Now, you know, that was a long time ago and the game has moved on. But you can be like that. You know, it's not always necessary to go for quantity. It's quality that matters, you know, and with the right data, you can make the right decisions about that. So it may well be that, you know, everybody benefits because you stop the front line being quite as mad as it is when you're stuffing it full of jobs that are just flying through the workshop, you know, and taking small amounts in, you know, at a time with quality work.
Steve and I were discussing earlier this morning, you know, in particular in respect of manufacturer recalls, where you have, you know, thousands of vehicles quite often need to come back. The dealer is earning a flat fee, a very, very small flat fee for that modification.
Well, it depends what the work is, but
quite often a fairly small flat fee. And you know, if you just invite all those customers and you book yourself out unduly, really, with lots of low-paying customers over a short period, it's really very inefficient use of your time. You need to spread those out over that 4, 5, 6 week period, so you can mix them in with all of your other retail paying customers.
But again, you know, with recall, and that's a good subject really, because with recalls, very often you're seeing customers that you've never seen before.
Quite
you know,
often,
they might be second, third, fourth owner, whatever, but there'll be a ton of customers. I mean, because some recalls go back quite a long way. So there's an opportunity in there, you know, and again, if you aren't seeing them just for the recall, which you're right, might be, the biggest recall I ever actioned was just to replace a radiator cap. like a 2-minute job. But if your processes were right, you would get the data from that customer, and you would understand what they had, their car, what sort of car they had, what age the car was, and what kind of offers you could make that were appropriate to that customer. That's proper customer relationship management, isn't it? It's CRM isn't just a system you bolt onto things, is it? Customer relationship management is marketing to me what matters to me, not to Paul, because Paul has different requirements to me. So, you can turn a 10-minute recall campaign into a lasting business relationship if your processes are right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Let's call the Mike Tyson effect of auto retail. That's maybe the human side of auto retail. There's just so many people, so there's always the unknown. So we have the processes, but we just have so many people to orchestrate.
Yeah.
That's what we love and hate in auto. It's like it's lots of people. It's consumer interaction. It's complex.
Right.
Yeah.
So hint. Can technology help us here?
Yeah, I think it absolutely does. I mean, I'm not. For the last 12 years I've been running a professional body, so I mean, I'm very much pro the people, but I think, look, I mean, the truth of the matter is, in the UK we have an awful lot of vacancies in automotive. We have 14,000 vacancies across automotive in at the moment. So a lot of people, there's a lot of key people missing from the process. So plus, as a specific problem in the UK, I mean, employment costs have gone up. Some of the things like national insurance costs and things like that have gone up. So you have to think very carefully about where people are incredibly important to the business, but you've got to use them tactically. You've got to, they're your best asset, but they're also your most expensive asset. So they need to be in the right place doing the right thing. And the best way to get a payback on that is to give them the best tools to do the job. So don't ask them to do the things that they are innately not that great at, or that the world they work in doesn't allow them to be great at because they have too many other distractions. So give them, feed them well, give them all of surround them with processes that make their life, enable them to be incredibly effective and efficient.
Yeah, I don't think I've been attending any meeting with any importers or OEMs where they're saying, I would like the dealers to do more of this.
Yeah.
They are not proactive. They should do this.
To your point you made a little earlier, Nicholas, about technology, does it enable? Of course it enables, but I think drawing on my own personal experiences for the last 15, 20 years, where I'm involved with building and selling SaaS technology to auto finance companies and by default their dealer networks, you must not in any way, shape or form consider technology to be the panacea that fixes all the problems, because it isn't. And you always require, at some level, human interaction. Now, the services I was providing required quite a lot of human interaction, and that's where we found it broke down. In certain areas, you'd get, very broadly speaking, 30% of a network that would be very, very good, 30% that would be acceptable, and 30% would fall below par. And whatever we did, you could never really balance that. However we tried to move that needle up, it always remained the same, irrespective of what brand was above the front door. So, you can't expect it to be a panacea, but when you can automate services built on a technology platform which delivers the material directly into the customer, or delivers the material, I always call it putting the golf ball on the tee and just saying that all the hard work's been done. You just got to take your driver and knock it down the fairway. That's when you get results, because it's easy. So you have to make it easy for the consumer and for, whether it's a salesperson, service advisor, to physically enact And then that starts bringing a lot of positive results.
So technology enables to reduce the Mike Tyson effect.
Yeah. Yes, I think it. I think it does because like I say, it's like, yeah. I mean, another way of putting it is, I say it's like first contact with the enemy. You can have this beautiful plan on paper, but the real world is more random than that. And whether it's the staff or the customers or whatever, it's people on both sides, and they don't always fit that plan. But there are things that you need to do as a business which you can't afford not to do just because, you had a busy day, or because of other natural things that happen at the front line. And because if you aren't on top of, when it comes to retention, if you aren't on top of the right processes 24/7, it just won't happen. It just won't happen. That big hole that is there, that the big opportunity gap just continues to be there or to grow, as I say, I mean, the old saying about working smarter rather than harder, it comes to mind, so it's not, as we've all kind of mutually agreed, it's not about, AI is not the solution in itself. There's a lot of people out there, bandying AI around and saying it's the solution to everything. Well, it's not. I mean, it's you've got to go back to first principles. You've got to do the right things first. And if you're doing the right things and you've got robust processes in place, and you understand what your opportunity is and what you need to do to get there, then you can use the technology to help you do it really, really well and to do it consistently. But you can't have one without the other.
Absolutely. It requires, the foundations, the engine room, the processes to be working beautifully before you overlay, an AI layer, because that's only going to enhance or, in fact, have a detrimental effect to what you've already got in place. So that is the foundation. You've got to have great processes in place, and then you can build on those and really rocket forward by having the addition of the AI technologies properly embedded in certain areas.
Yeah, but maybe as well, can we just maybe go back a bit and say, okay, when you were kickstarting back in the times, retention.
Yeah.
What were then the hardest part of kicking off this program, because maybe that gives some insight to what is maybe easier now.
Well, I mean, look, there was for as long as I could remember, there were always challenges around data, always. So nobody ever. It was very rare you ever got anybody say my database is rubbish. Some might put their hand up and say, I'm not sure my data is quite where it needs to be. But I think that that's on a scale. But I think even the ones who believe their data is spot on and they employ people to look after it and all the rest of it, in reality, if you really, really critically analysed it, there would be gaps. There would be gaps because of that. All the things we've talked about, all the human elements, which mean that it's quite easy to get it wrong. So the fact that you have Paul's name in the database and it's got a sort of a vehicle registration and a kind of a next service date next to it, doesn't guarantee that Paul still owns that car and, and all those kind of things. It's a big job. It's a big job. And I mean, what we did over the years and what's still going on is in all, as new cars have required less and less intervention, we've pushed out into the older cars and so on, and that's fine, but growing your service park, your service population is still not that if you don't have the right tools in place to make sure that you're maximizing the opportunity. Just adding more customer names is not going to get you where you need to be. So whoever your customers are, you need to know everything you possibly can about them, so that you never miss an opportunity. You never miss an opportunity, and and that's a relentless thing. That's something that has to happen, every day of every week.
No, but you would say that, well, if I talk to any CEOs in top AM 100, they would say, well, I have a CRM system.
Yes.
Yeah. But as I say, don't think your technology is the panacea, because, garbage in, garbage out. And I don't think I've ever seen one that's in perfect shape, and probably won't. And you can expect that from to a degree. But as I say, it's not a panacea. It's an enabler.
So now we had a morning step. So what are the typical gaps? Like, explain in simple words. What are the questions that you should be talking to about the board or the management? How can you question the management about retention?
Well, I mean, that's a really good point, because people don't know what they don't know.
No, exactly.
You can be blissfully ignorant, So I'm sure that a great many people, and I don't doubt for one second that a great many of the people that you have engaged with over time didn't think they had a problem, or at least the problem they thought they had was nowhere near as significant as the problem that it turned out to be. So I mean that there is a challenge in getting people to accept that they may not be as good as they think they are. But then if you're able to demonstrate to them, and I think that's the best possible way, is to say, look, give me the chance to demonstrate to you that there's a better way of doing things, and I can break that down to a number that is your opportunity cost right now. I think that's a pretty compelling argument. That's a pretty compelling argument. I mean, why would anybody not accept that?
And I underscore that totally, because whether it be after sales or physical sales, I remember very well speaking to dealer groups and individual dealer principals and asking them some simple questions. Mr. CEO or Mr. General Manager, how many live customers do you believe that your dealership in this location currently has with a specific auto finance company? And they'd sort of rock back and say, must be about X hundred. And because they didn't know, we'd done the data research and the data cleansing, and you turn the screen around and say, actually, it's less than half that. They'd throw their hands up in despair. But then when you demonstrate to them that we've further drilled down into this data set, and out of those X hundred, this at 25% are in a position to do this, 20% are in a position to do that, and 10% are in a position to do the other, that would then start making sense. Well, are you telling me that we can drive more profitability from going down channel A, channel B, and channel C? I said, well, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Why aren't we doing that? Because you didn't know it was there. Why didn't you know it was there? Because your staff aren't mind readers. You have to surface the information. And when you've surfaced information that's robust, then you can act on it.
I know things move on, and the way businesses get valued today is done a bit differently, but traditionally it always used to be so many years profits plus assets, and then you would have a figure for goodwill. And basically goodwill was the database, wasn't it? It was the value of the customer database, and quite often people got a nasty shock when they thought they had a nominal value for their business, and then with a bit of judicious auditing of the database, it turned into a very different figure than the one they had in mind. So but that's only ever a one-off exercise. I mean, the thing is, it's all very well to do a database audit and cleanse it and all the rest of it, but if you then go on adding incorrect information or missed information and everything, you're soon back where you started. So unfortunately, it's one of those things that has to be done. You have to have the right processes and the right systems in place to make sure that just, once you've got it right, it stays right.
Yeah, and you have to do things regularly until it becomes habitual. It's just part of your daily operating controls. And once you've put a tick in that box, then everything will flow from that. But if it's sporadic, if it's erratic, if it's we do it when we need to do it, but we're not going to do it now because we don't need to do it, then it's just a mess. You need to have consistency, and consistency is far better than having peaks and troughs. Even though you may have some ring the bell days, you're getting many, many more which are not ringing the bell days. So if you can lift it so you've got consistency throughout, it allows you to plan better, and it gives you a much better result overall.
Amazing. No, I think that was kind of what I call the first part of the podcast, like the strategic agenda. And we like to say that AI is not the strategy. Closing the retention gap is the strategy.
Absolutely.
The profitability is in the aftermarket. There's not a profitability gap in AI.
Quite the reverse.
Got the reverse. So, but I just would like to have kind of a separate session on these questions that we've raised to how we can trust AI. And I think it was kind of be interesting. You don't have to rehearse anything, but just like spontaneous, like, data foundation as a way to work with your AI provider. What's your voice over on that, Steve? Well,
I mean, there is no point. You don't get to advance beyond Go until you've done that. There's no system in the world that is going to give you the right answer if you don't have the right data for that answer to be based on. So it's an absolute prerequisite.
Yeah, you don't have anything if you're not deeply integrated to the DMS and all the DVL, DVSA and blah. You need to be fully integrated to deliver a
absolutely. You need the best quality database you can possibly have, and to know that the processes are in place to keep it that way.
And what's your take on personalization? I think we've been talking about that. What does it mean?
It's the difference. It's the difference between winning and losing. And I believe definitely that if you've got a mechanism or a process that can be linked intelligently to your, again, coming back to your wider, broader database, that will know that my phone number is linked to my name is linked to these two vehicles which are currently on their schedule, and you can have an intelligent conversation and make it easy for the customer to converse with you. That makes it makes the whole thing smooth and makes things flow, and it just makes people easier to deal with, and they feel happy about it. Oh, you remembered that I'm driving this or that, or I've got both cars still. So it just makes for a much smoother interaction, much smoother interaction.
And just like when it says point number 3, with your words, why do you think we've highlighted the booking completion?
Well, because there are this is a key part of the process, because this is where things can go wrong. It's also where things can get done in an incomplete fashion. So it's a great opportunity to make sure that all the data you've got is right and up to date. You haven't got a changed phone number, you haven't got a changed email address or whatever. And it's really, really important that the process is conducted in such a way that it's absolutely clear to both parties what it is that you're required to do. So the customer doesn't get any nasty shocks. They're well informed. They know, and they're confident that their car has been booked on a given date, and they're going to get confirmation of that, and they know exactly what it's booked in for, and they've got an idea of the price. There's nothing worse than sort of over-promising and under-delivering, so telling somebody that, that should be around £250, and then they turn up and get a £500 bill, and they don't know why. So that whole process is absolutely critical, and understanding, particularly if they're a regular customer, you should know that you should know up front whether they prefer to do service while you wait, or drop off and collect, or have a a loan car and those kind of things. So, you know, you can be proactive with those things. You know, you can say, oh yeah, Paul, you know, I know you like to have a loan car or whatever, you know, are you happy for me to arrange that? Or, you know, and maybe you are, maybe you aren't. But, you know, that again, this comes back to what customer relationship management truly is. It's about, you know, talking to that person as an individual and understanding exactly what their requirements are, but also in that process, making sure that any changed information you've got. And so you're always as up to date as you can be.
Should we rephrase booking completion? Watch out for the Tyson effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you don't have booking completion, you may be having too much human interaction, and we already know that is the error of why in such a big orchestration we don't always have the extra resources.
Well, I think you know, we've got the means at our disposal today to do these things better. You know, we were having a conversation earlier, and I said that, you know, isn't it odd that historically you would phone up to book your car and speak to somebody, and they would endeavour to, you know, find out from you or discuss with you what it is you wanted. Which may or may not be accurate, but you know, you believe the car needs an oil service or whatever it is. Quite often it turns out to be different, but then you bring the car in and the chances are you will not speak to the same person when you bring the car in. You speak to somebody else, and then that person has to interpret what you want. They'll pass that information or note that information down to workshop control, who will then interpret it again to the technician. And it's like Chinese whispers. It's a wonder we ever got it right, to be honest. So anything you can do to kind of smooth that chain out and take away that variability has to be, you know, avoid the Mike Tyson situation.
People, myself included, obviously, we want to make it simple, want to make it easy. And if I engage, I want to get the whole process done. I don't want to break it and have to start again, or, I'll put you through, and the phone rings and rings and rings and rings and rings and rings. It rings so many times that it cuts off automatically. Then you've got to end up calling back again. So it's the convenience of having something done. We also live in a increasingly self-serve world, and we're used to getting things done very, very quickly on our own timeline rather than waiting for somebody else. So I just think that not having a booking completion tool would be absurd. So it's really very, very valuable to have that built into your communications deck.
I think the old saying about, you know, not necessarily cash rich, but relatively cash rich and time poor is what most people are. And you know, we've got used to, I mean, whether we like it or not, the expectations that people have not been set by us. They've been set by other businesses like Amazon, you know, and people can, you know, interact with Amazon any day of the week, any time of day or night, and get what they want. And, you know, the reality is, it may not be convenient for me during the day when I'm busy working to phone up and book my car in for a service. I might want to do it at 11 o'clock at night. And why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I? And why should I get a you know, business closed message, or why should I get a different level of service? Because I happen to be unable to phone up during the day. So, I mean, you know, these are all pinch points that you can address, aren't they?
Amazing. No, but I think we like to think like in a broader thinking of a theory where you who cares about technology? We want to care about completing a job.
Yeah,
it's the outcome. It's always the outcome.
Absolutely.
I'm not interested in the engine.
Yeah.
I just need to know the outcome.
Yeah.
So maybe you can say that, like, so it's about the outcome and performance.
And making it easy for people to interact, making it easy for your staff to interact and for the consumer to interact with your staff. And if you make it easy, guess what? People do it 9 times out of 10. So, you know, that's really, that's no words of wisdom. I mean, that's been the fact of the matter for donkey's years. So there's nothing new, but it's just harnessing all of these technologies that we now have available to us, putting them in the right order to make this happen on time, every time, and on demand as well.
Yeah, no. So the questions for the board to raise to management would be: are we delivering a better customer experience, and are we performing better? Or else, well, then we still have half completed jobs. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you know, you've got to have a clear roadway, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's like I said earlier on. You know, the hardest race to run is one where you don't know where the finish line is. You know, because you don't know how to pace yourself. So I think that so it means, you know, having or working with partners who can give you the clearest indication of where you are today and what is a realistic target to aim for at any point in time, you know, and it's like it's an iterative process. You know, when you get to that destination, you can set your next point, you know, but it's you know it's kind of constant improvement, really, but it's based on starting from the right place and having the right processes to get there.
Starting with the end in mind and breaking it down into bite-sized chunks, and that's how you'll achieve success.
Eating the elephant a slice at a time.
That's what they say, or a chunk even.
Yeah.
So let's close this AI chapter and say, well, AI is not the strategy. Closing the retention gap is. Let's say you were sitting close to a good friend and you were supposed to give a good AI advice on starting up an AI program, because I think the insight we have is like the Tyson effect will always come because we have so many people.
Yeah.
We can write down the perfect processes, but it's so human interaction. So we need technology. So we need better technology, but they should work with us.
Yeah.
And not against us.
Yeah.
We hear again and again when people start up that I bought this great system, but now I need to hire one.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean the technology works for you. Not against you. It's not. The technology isn't an end in itself. So buying a box that whirs around and flashes lights sitting in the corner that apparently does something wonderful, that's just never going to happen unless it's got to be integrated from end to end. So that the people and the non-people bit needs to be seamlessly put together. But I mean, you know, where the technology can help is that it can go on doing those things. If you set it up right, it can go on doing those things, whatever's happening at the front end. You know, so whether you're having a really horrendous day, you know, where everything's going wrong, you know, technicians didn't turn up, customers turn up and their jobs are twice as big as they thought they were, and all those kind of things. That's always going to happen, but you can't take a day off from all of that important stuff that drives retention, because as soon as you take a day off, it becomes 2 days off or 3 days off, and then you're nowhere. You don't know. You're driving blind because you no longer have the right data to work with.
I think consistency is the word.
Absolutely.
So just like if you should pick one thing that you should tell your friend to put on the checklist, what's your first thing, and then what's your poll?
Well, I mean, you know, we've said it over and over again, and at the risk of repeating ourselves, you know, nothing moves. If you really want to grow a successful business that is self-perpetuating, you absolutely have to get the data right to begin with, and then have the processes in place to make sure it stays that way.
What should we then put down number two?
Number two, I would say the delivery. The delivery process is crucial, and making sure that it meets the customer's expectations and needs, rather than the vendor or the company concerned. So always think like the customer. TLC squared. Think like a customer.
It's an interesting. I mean, you know, just as an addendum to that, you know, customer relationship management, CRM is not a system. People sort of think it is. It's something you buy and bolt onto your DMS, your dealer management system. So it's not. Customer relationship management is an actual thing. It's a definable it's a definable outcome, that means that customers feel like individuals. And they feel like you value them and know them and you understand them, and they're not just, it's not a cookie cutter process. It may be, the best thing in the world is to have a cookie cutter process that doesn't look like one.
So you would say to your best friend, don't fly to San Francisco, but go down to the dealership and truly understand the customer and the customer journey.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's going to move the needle.
Yeah.
Are you moving the journey, making it simpler, not by learning more about AI? Yeah.
The most important things, because obviously over the many years, I spent an awful lot of time going out and visiting dealers, and you always see the things that they don't see, because we're all guilty of stepping over the rubbish on our own doorstep, because you become used to it. So you always see the things that they haven't seen. It's like, those flags outside, like, when did you last replace them? They're filthy, that kind of thing. And when you stand particularly if you walk into a business where they're not expecting you or they don't know who you are, and you just watch the interactions between customers. I mean, the other great thing is, I've watched customers driving round and round and round the car park looking for a parking space. And it's like, why have you not taken that problem off them? I mean, I understand you've got parking restrictions, but that's your problem, not theirs. So somebody should have greeted them and taken that car away and sorted it out. It shouldn't be the customer's problem. Customers shouldn't be ignored in the reception. Yeah. So actually seeing, so you're right. You've got to be in there, and you've got to see not just what the numbers mean and what the data means. I mean, the data is really, really important. How does that relate to the human experience, though?
The emotion that plays into it, and how people perceive it, and attitude, feeling, and emotion are all of those intangibles that really that square the circle.
It's funny. I as I was saying that, I was thinking about a particular dealer. I remember they invited me to the opening of their new premises, and I walked in, and they had a big reception area with lots and lots of desks, sort of lined up, back towards, and each one had somebody on it. And as I walked in, they all kind of put their heads down because they were all busy. And I managed to get all the way to the back of the dealership without anybody saying to me, "Can I help you, sir? Who are you here to see?" So again, I mean, that's the human bit. So the human bit's still really important. But I mean, if you take away, who knows? They might have been sitting there trying to update service records or something. So if you take away the things that they're not great at, and that need to be done more consistently than humans do, you free them up to be humans and do the things that do matter, the actual interaction.
And don't just suppose, just tell people you have to do this, and this. Ask your team, I've got this task, who's up for the job, and let them put their hand up, because if you're giving the wrong job to the wrong person, or a job to the wrong person, the outcome is going to be less than ideal. But if you give that job to someone that's actually up for that job, the probability is it's going to be done much better, much more consistently.
Actually, the end to that story that I just told, by the way, was I got all the way to the back of the dealership, and a guy on the parts counter said, "Hello, sir. Are you looking for something? Can I help you?" Yeah, so they did. They got it right in the end.
Ironic.
They got it right in the end, but it's about joining the dots up, isn't it? Making. But there are solutions now that didn't exist before. There and it's about being discerning enough to understand which of those really are solutions and which of those are what the Americans would call snake oil.
Very good. So I think my last reminder would be on that. On the strategic agenda. 50 years ago, it said customer first. 40 years ago, it said customer first. Today, it says customer first. But we should, of course, accelerate with the technology we have today. But if you're a CEO or board member that want to check our customer first, try and call the dealer. Try and go down to the dealer and see how it is today. Yeah, that's still the best benchmark.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I think that's like, can you trust AI? You need to go with the customer, and I think that's kind of still that's what we want to like kind of close at. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
The final questions that we have before is like one of the things that we talked about, first meetings was the retention gap, because that's the ultimate enemy that we want to fight with being customer first. With your words, Steve, how would you explain the gaps to a friend that we discussed today? What are they? Just like practically.
The gap is there because you don't understand, you don't know your customers as well as you think you do. So there are, you might know some basic stuff. You might understand when, key services are coming up and everything, but there are so many more opportunities than that. The after-sales business isn't just about all the routine servicing. There are a ton of other services you can offer at the same time. There are, and they, and unless you fully understand your customer and you've got some sort of, ideas beyond that basic data, you're probably missing huge number of opportunities. I always think actually that the best dealerships, the best dealership I've probably ever dealt with, and it's still one of the best today, and I'm going back a very long time now, sort of over 30 years to when I first engaged with them. They were the first people to recognize that actually when service reception is busy, you should get you don't have a sales meeting, come and help out on reception. And guess what? You meet the customers and, actually, you're due a new car. Let me talk. I mean, it just worked a charm. They aimed to understand their customers from end to end, and that was everybody's job. That was everybody's job. But as I say, don't think of retention as just simply, of course it's really important to be on the money when it comes to getting people back in for their routine servicing and all the rest of it. But there's much more than that. There's much more than that. And it's all those other, other opportunities. I always used to say to the dealers, you've got to be really, really selfish with your customers. Don't ever let them walk away. Don't let them go down the road to the local fast fit center and get their battery. Or don't not have the tires available they need when their tires need replacing. Or, if they say, well, I can get my exhaust replaced cheaper elsewhere, then give them a competitive price. If the owner of the older cars goes to the fast fit center because the fast fit center gives them guaranteed pricing, then that's what you should do, too. It's, because people, particularly the owners of older cars, don't want to kind of give you their car and wait to be surprised what the cost is at the end. So, it's not rocket science, but unfortunately it's not easy either, because you've got to be doing it right all the time.
Amazing. And with your words, what would your takeaway? How do you explain what are the retention gaps to friends and colleagues?
Well, I think Steve's done a great job of talking about a whole raft of issues that create retention gaps. So I'm going to be a little bit more sparse with my words, and I would say that I was educated many years ago: never speak to customers if you haven't got something of value to share with them. Never. And to ensure that you've got the right message at the right time, which is of value to that customer, is critical. And if you have, whether it be after sales or whichever aspect of the business that you're in, then engage with that consumer and do it in the way that they want to be engaged with. So that would be my closing thoughts. Right time, right message of value to that customer, always.
And would you say as well, let's say it's about to start up a retention initiative, how to avoid having this feeling in the rooms that someone done something wrong? Any good like leadership experience? How to bring into the room like? Yeah. Well, we let's say that we miss out 10% or 15% because we simply manually insert the next service date.
Oh yeah,
Let's
well
say
I mean
that we haven't looked up the DVLA DFSA integration. Let's say we haven't accounted for mileage. Let's say.
Yeah, that's not something that there's a real danger, as I say. I mean, one of the toughest jobs you can have is being a service advisor, and if you're not careful, you kind of invert the pyramid and stand it on the service advisor's head. You give them all the responsibility, but giving responsibility without the right support is not fair. It's not fair. So retention is something that is core to the business. It's not an individual's job. And if you've missed a target because you've got poor data, you didn't know that this whole bunch of customers had sold their cars and they're now with somebody else. And well, then, you've got to take responsibility for that centrally. You can't blame that on the service team because, that's a core process of the business, and if what you have isn't fit for purpose, then you need to do something about it.
Very good, very good. No, but because we already know that most dealerships have heaps of deferred work that they never follow up on. They have lots of customers that has been to the workshop that have never been served. And we know that. Maybe they say they are at full capacity, but when you look into, maybe it's some kind of almost and not really. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in reality, the only way you'd be full capacity is if you were working the place 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great if that was a consideration you had to make about, taking on extra people to work longer hours because you had so much work, because you were maximizing the opportunity from everybody. I think that, I mean, look, I know that, it's now standard practice pretty much across Europe that people do, the EVHC, as we call it, the video health check. But do they all do it effectively? I mean, they all do it. So every customer gets a little video telling them what the state of their vehicle is. But do they, when they actually get what they call red and amber work? I mean, really, red work should never walk away. Never, because red work is safety related. So it's like, your brake pads are gone or your discs are gone or some other, that should never walk, ever, but it does. Customers will say, I'll get that fixed. And there are myriad ways of offering people options to stop that happening, whether it's a budget plan, because they have an affordability problem, whether it's they think they can get a cheaper price from an independent or something.
And just to explain here to the audience, you're saying, from the beginning that this assignment that I go is not profitable.
Yeah. So sorry. So
it's not profitable. That's what you're saying. If it's a red work.
Well, no, red work. No. I mean, red work is genuine work. But it's that they categorise it as red because that is work that urgently needs doing on the car. It's not something that you should be looking at getting this done in the next couple of months. It's needs doing right now. Your brake pads are dangerous. So. There shouldn't ever be a situation where red work walks away, but it does happen, because very often the customer thinks, well, look, I don't want a big bill. I can't afford it right now. But they should have a whole bunch of options they can offer to stop that happening. And then the amber work, which is the greater amount, is the stuff that's going to need doing pretty soon. And sometimes, you have to accept we're not going to do that today, but you have to be really on top of the follow-up to make sure that, in an ideal world, you get all of that back because you were the ones who actually identified the work needed doing. But, customers sometimes choose not to have it done. I mean, we can't get away from the fact that, there's a cost of living crisis, and sometimes people just live with a problem on their car. But if you know what the problem is, you can find solutions. So if it's an affordability problem, or any of those things, you can work that out within the business. But you really, really have to know in detail what it is you're winning and what it is you're losing. And
with affordability, even in premium brands now, you've got a number of providers of buy now, pay later, 0% schemes where you can divide your service bill into 4, 5, 6 payments for no additional interest. So that should help certainly with the just let's put the amber in with the red and get it all done, and I haven't got to worry about it.
And to be fair, a lot of dealers are doing that. Yeah, a lot of dealers are doing that. So I'm not kind of pointing the finger and saying nobody does it, but there are plenty of people who will say to you, we aren't great at converting red and amber work, that we get out of the vehicle health check. Well, what's the point of doing the vehicle health check then?
If delivered correctly, without putting the fear of God into people, anything that comes up red, should be made very clear that this is, something that you really needs to be done now.
I know of many cases where the dealer has to ask the customer to sign a disclaimer to drive the car away.
It's fair enough.
Because we've told you that this is a safety issue, and you're choosing to take the car away. But ideally, you'd find a better solution than that.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely.
Not easy, but
so there's gaps.
Yeah,
that's the potential. We can take control of our business.
Yeah,
and leading with customer retention.
Yeah.
And most likely maximize every opportunity on every single customer.
Yeah.
That's what we're dreaming about, yeah.
Yeah.
Fairly maximize.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not about it's all
about treating customers fairly.
Yeah, of course. There's a balance in all that.
And we can unlock technology, but we need to stay on being still customer first.
Yeah.
And making sure that we are delivering an better experience to the customer.
Yeah.
And that should show up in the numbers.
Exceeding expectations, treating customers fairly.
Yeah. Or even easier.
That
good response rate, a good booking completion, the success rate when we pick up the phone is better.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where, I mean, and it's important to say that it's not about bleeding the customer dry. No. It's about actually giving them a total service so that they have faith in you. They know you're being genuine. They know you're not inventing work on their car. They know that everything you do can be evidenced, and that when they have a problem, particularly if it's a problem which is also connected to affordability, you have solutions for them.
It's gonna be interesting to see the first NPS surveys performing and asking, how did you like the agent versus?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I mean, from what I've witnessed, I mean, you actually, the process up front says this is, confesses that you're speaking to to AI as opposed to, I don't think you'd necessarily know if you weren't told. But what you get is a very, very effective, solution. Why should you worry as long as you get clarity and all the right information and you come away with what you wanted and expected?
Looking at some figures earlier, just to underscore that fact that the outbound AI agent is very effective. Some figures that we were looking at earlier, Steve, you may remember, showed that circa 35% of customers that had received emails, received SMS messages, received telephone calls from the dealership contact center, 35% of that balance, of which there were many thousands, were contacted by an AI agent who calls until he gets through. It gets through. So it gets through to the consumer and finishes that call. And that ended with not only 35% connected, but I think out of that 35%, there was somewhere in the region of 40% that actually transacted business. So it's crucial. It's just it's a wonderful tool, again, if used correctly. And on the making sure you're treating customers fairly, a little anecdote from many moons ago, I was told, Paul, you can shear the sheep every year, but you can skin it only once.
Yeah.
Which is very, very, very
Yeah,
clear.
yeah, very, absolutely correct.
My last question on this podcast would be, okay, now you were to design a new dealership tomorrow. What thinking would you bring into that dealership?
Yeah, that it would certainly be. I mean, it would certainly be different, because what we have is we have a business that's evolved over many decades, and without doubt, as with many businesses, actually, if you just wiped the slate clean and said, you know, you've never been to a dealership before. You don't know what a dealership looks like, but these are the things you've got to do. This is what you've got to achieve. You would design it differently. And you would definitely look at what technology can do for you, and you would have, you know, if you were optimizing performance, you would have a very clear idea of where people add the greatest value and where processes and automation adds the greatest value, and you would get if you get that balance absolutely right, you're likely to maximize your result.
I would say, you know, just bring car buying or shopping experience into the mainstream, and that has been done very, very effectively. Whereas rather than having a car dealership, you bring it into a shopping centre. After all, a dealership is a shop, and you go shopping for a car, and you make that process as simple as possible for consumers to interact. Now, without naming names, there was a really good tech company in the UK a handful of years ago that started off that process with Hyundai in major shopping centres. And then they moved on to work with Jaguar Land Rover in major shopping centres. They didn't have salespeople, they had advisors. You wanted to test drive a car in the shopping centre, they had all their models in the car park underneath. You were given the keys, obviously upon providing necessary information to the assistant. You drove that car. You could configure the car internally. There were nobody pushing you to buy. You configure the car on their computer system. You could then transfer that to home. When you got home, you could open your computer, log on to the system, and find that vehicle and move forward with a purchase. So it brought it into the mainstream, the way in which we would buy any other item, expensive or not, and that's just a different focus rather than, it's just, dare I use it, and everyone uses it, it's overcooked. But if you can give people an Apple Store experience when they're looking to buy their car, you've cracked it.
That's pretty much what you see in China. That's what you've described is exactly what you see in China, at least in the cities. I mean, it may be a little different outside of the cities, but in the likes of Shanghai, Beijing, Nanjing, and so on, that's exactly what you see. You go into the shopping mall, and there is a Xiaomi store there, or there is a Geely store, or Zeekr, or whatever it may be. Yeah, because it's where people are.
That's good.
And it's full convenience, you know?
Yeah. As a last anecdote, is we actually did a competition at Autoflows, and we had 6 teams, and they were competing about trying to set up the best dealership of the future. And the panel was, of course, ChatGPT. I don't know if it was you, Steve, but we had a panel of industry leaders, ChatGPT, and they were ranking the different concepts that the different teams came in with. And the big idea that won was said, remember, no one wants to bring your car to service.
No.
It's a distressed purchase.
Who wants to go to? So what the idea was that the 7-Eleven of automotive, and what we heard today in the inbound, like fast tracking, you know, like figuring out how to always be there for you when you can.
Yeah.
I think that's so. I think definitely. Let's close on lead with being customer first. Truly understand the experience. Maybe even use get the energy from looking into China and thinking about how does the Apple Store.
But really believe it.
Yeah,
believe it from
believe.
the inside, because
believe it.
there's too much lip service paid to customer first, customer centered. You've got to believe it. You've got to breathe it. You've got to absolutely let it exude from the pores of your body.
Amazing. That was 2 hours of talk. Thank you very much. It was
Thank
a
you.
pleasure.
Hopefully there's one or two bits you can use there.